The derelict was already on Keth Oron's scanner before the Venn compass finished its transit drop, which meant it had been waiting. She noticed that fact and filed it under the category of things she would think about later, when the salvage contract was signed, and the hull was secured, and there was distance between her and whatever floated 3,000 meters off the starboard bow. The compass shuddered as its drive coils bled residual charge, and her co-pilot Sess pressed his hands flat against the navigation board as though steadying it would help. Neither of them spoke. The scanner resolved the target into something with shape, a long vessel, roughly cylindrical, drive section dark at the stern, forward hull intact. No running lights, no beacon, no distress signature of any kind. No markings Keth recognized, except one. Along the flank of the vessel, in a script she had only seen in archival photographs, was a designation. 17 characters. The collective's xenographic database had a file on that script, and the file was marked with the kind of access restriction that did not come with explanations. She had seen that restriction on 2 other things in her career: the survey boundary marker at Sector Vren's outer edge, and the standing order posted in the Salvage Guild's registration office, the one that began "No operations permits will be issued for coordinates within." The vessel was inside those coordinates. Keth was too. Sess said very quietly, "We should go back." She looked at the scanner. The derelict was massive, easily 4 times the displacement of the compass, maybe more. The hull read as intact. No atmosphere bleed, no obvious rupture, no debris field. By every metric the scanner offered, the ship was simply stopped, drifting at a velocity too low for accident, too high for anchor, as though something had set it down gently and walked away. She said, "I know." She took the helm anyway. The approach took 12 minutes. Sess ran the protocols without being asked: passive scan, magnetic field check, radiation survey, and each one came back clean in the way that clean results felt wrong when they should have returned something. A vessel that size, dark and unpowered, should have been radiating residual heat from a drive shutdown. It was not. It was as cold as the surrounding void, which meant it had been here long enough for deep space to have taken everything from it. Or it meant the drive had not shut down, it had simply stopped. Keth did not say this aloud. She docked the compass to the derelict's secondary access port using the universal collar her guild required for all salvage work, and the collar sealed on the first attempt, which surprised her. The port was not corroded. It was not degraded by exposure. It opened the way a door opens when someone inside has recently oiled the mechanism. She noticed that too. Sess stayed with the ship. She had not argued about this. She had told him that standard protocol for single-hull entry required 1 crew member at the controls, and he had accepted this explanation without noting that they both knew she was wrong about which of them was better suited to go in. Keth was 21 years old, and she had done 14 salvage operations, which was more than Sess had. She told herself this on the other side of the collar hatch, as the derelict's corridor absorbed the light of her helmet lamp and gave most of it back as shadow. The air inside was breathable. Her suit's analyzer reported that, and she did not trust it, but she left her helmet on regardless. The corridor was wide. Wider than she expected for the hull dimensions. The cross-section suggested internal space had been arranged differently than she was used to, the kind of engineering decision that reflected different assumptions about how beings move through space. The walls were a material she could not immediately identify. Not metal, not composite, not any polymer in her experience, but something that absorbed her lamp's light softly, without reflection. The floor was clear of obstruction. No debris. No scatter. No evidence of whatever had stopped this vessel in its tracks. She moved forward. Somewhere behind her, the access hatch sealed itself. She had not touched it. The first compartment she found was a storage area, and it was empty. Not empty, in the way a room feels empty when it was never intended to hold anything, only to hold the absence of something. The shelving units were present and intact, and every slot on every shelf was bare. She checked the door frames for scoring, for blast marks, for the chemical residue of fire suppression systems. There was nothing. She ran her glove along one shelf edge and her fingers came back clean. She kept moving. Her suit logged the time. She had been inside for 9 minutes. At the intersection of the main corridor and what appeared to be a cross passage running toward the vessel's center, she stopped. The lamp caught something on the wall she had almost passed without seeing, a marking, low on the bulkhead, at approximately the height of a human knee. Not the vessel's designation script, something smaller, something that looked as though it had been made by hand rather than stenciled, cut into the surface rather than applied. She crouched and looked at it. It was a tally, marks in groups of 5, the way the collective's own field researchers used when they needed a count that could not be lost to data failure. She counted the groups. The total was 43. She stared at the tally for a long moment. Then she stood and kept moving. The cross passage led to a larger compartment, what she took to be an operations center, though the console layout was unlike anything in her guild's reference database. The screens were dark. The chairs, there were 6 of them, arranged in a half-circle facing the forward screens, were empty and undisturbed. She moved to the nearest console and ran her scanner over it. The scanner returned a reading she had to check twice. The system was not powered off. It was in standby. There was a power source somewhere on this vessel, patient and slow, maintaining just enough current to keep the systems ready. Ready for what? She did not ask aloud. She checked the screen interface and found something she did not expect. A display queue. Several items. The topmost was flagged with a priority marker, and when her scanner translated the flag, the translation came back as a single word. Warning. Her hand moved toward the interface before she had consciously decided to touch it. She stopped herself. She stood in the center of the operations compartment with her lamp throwing shadows around the chairs, and she understood, with a clarity she had not felt since her licensing exam, that she was going to read the warning. She had not come this far through 14 salvage operations by being cautious at the moment of contact. She was 21, and she had not yet learned that the things worth warning people about were the things people did not walk away from having been warned. She pressed the interface. The screen lit. The text was in the xenographic script from the vessel's hull, the script her guild's database flagged with restricted access, and her suit's translation matrix labored over it for 11 seconds before it produced output. 11 seconds was a long time for a translation matrix. They were designed to return results in under 3. The text read, "This vessel is in prohibited space as defined by Transit Authority Accord 70 Prime. If you are reading this, you have boarded without authorization. The Accord requires US to inform you that this sector is occupied. It has been occupied for as long as records exist. The vessel you are standing in was placed here as a navigational marker. We would prefer you leave through the access port you entered. Do not go aft." She read it twice. Her suit's environmental sensors ran a background check and reported nothing anomalous. The temperature inside the derelict remained constant. The power source continued its patient, slow current. The 6 chairs in the half-circle remained empty. The passage aft was at the back of the compartment. She told herself she was going to leave. She had the warning text on her suit's recorder, which satisfied the guild's discovery documentation requirement. She had the external scan data. She had the access collar contact log. She had, in every measurable sense, more than enough for a preliminary find report, and a preliminary find report was the correct and complete first step of any salvage operation of this scale. She should seal the hatch, return to the compass, file the report, and let the guild's review board decide what to do with coordinates inside a restricted zone. She turned toward the passage aft. This was not a conscious decision. She understood that afterward, when she was trying to reconstruct the sequence. She had read the warning, had intended to leave, and had instead walked toward the thing she had been told not to approach, as though intending and doing had briefly become separate processes that ran in different directions without consulting each other. The aft passage was shorter than she expected. It terminated in a hatch that was sealed, properly sealed, with the kind of mechanical locking mechanism that required deliberate action to engage. Someone had locked this hatch from the outside. She looked at the mechanism for a moment. Then she looked at the hatch itself. There was a window set into the hatch. Not a viewport, a window, small, roughly circular, with the kind of reinforced transparency that was designed to allow observation rather than navigation. She moved to it and looked through. What was in the aft compartment did not resolve clearly. Her lamp's light reached through the window and scattered before it could identify the compartment's far wall, as though the space on the other side was larger than the vessel's external dimensions should have permitted. She pressed her faceplate to the window and tried to focus on something specific, a surface, an edge, an object with defined geometry. The things she could see at the edges of her lamp's reach were not moving. She was certain of this. They had the stillness of things that had been still for a very long time, the particular quality of stillness that comes not from emptiness but from patience. She knew the difference. She had done salvage work on derelicts that were genuinely empty, and empty spaces had a different quality, a blankness, an absence of any density in the dark. What her lamp reached in the aft compartment did not feel absent. It felt present and waiting. 43 tally marks. She stepped back from the window. She walked back through the operations compartment without running, which was a choice she made consciously, and maintained through 3 full minutes of corridor, access collar, and decompression cycle. When the compasses in her hatch opened and Cess looked up from the navigation board and saw her face, he did not say anything. He simply began the undocking sequence. They were 2 hours from the restricted boundary when she opened her suit recorder and listened to the translation of the warning text. The voice of the translation matrix was flat and procedural. It had no register for the difference between a safety notice and a statement that should not exist. She listened to it twice. Then she opened the Guild's preliminary find report form on her screen and sat with the cursor blinking in the coordinate field for a long time. She typed the coordinates. She typed the vessel dimensions. She typed the discovery date and time. In the field marked assessment status she typed, closed. She did not type the warning text into the report. The recorder held it. She did not delete the recording, but she set its access restriction to the highest level the Guild system permitted, and she made a note in the access log that read, "For review BY sector authority only," and she did not specify which sector authority because she was not certain there was one with jurisdiction over what she had seen. The field marked DETALS of interior exploration she left blank. She filed the report. The Guild's automated system acknowledged it with a standard timestamp. No alert flag, no escalation. The system accepted a closed assessment the same way it accepted any other status, without interest, without question, without noting that the 43 tally marks had not been on any chart, in any file, in any database Keth could access, and that she did not know who had made them, or what they had been counting, or whether the count was finished. She knew only one thing about the count that she had not known before she boarded. It had not been 44. She was still in the compass. She was still alive. She was 21 years old, and she had already decided, with a completeness she had never applied to any other decision, that she would not take another salvage contract in any sector within 400 light-years of those coordinates. She would not explain this to the Guild. She would not explain it to Cess, who had not asked and would not. She would simply not go back. The derelict was still there in the dark, with its power source patient and slow, and its hatch locked from the outside, and the thing in the aft compartment as still and as waiting as it had been when she pressed her faceplate to the window. She hoped it had not noticed that she had not reached 44. She suspected it had.